Hi everyone, welcome to the last episode in the series How to Create a Professional Map using the ArcGIS Pro software. If you have not been with us through this whole series, I recommend you go back to my channel and then check out the videos from part 1 to this very last episode so that you catch up on all that we have done. And in this last episode, we are going to look at how you can create a layout for the work that you have done. The layout, I mean how we are going to combine the work that you have done inside the software, meaning the maps that you are, the boundary of the Greater Accra region, the data that we have inputted, the charts that we have created, and all other things together with the component of a map to make it a professional map. Add everything together on a sheet so that all that you have done becomes meaningful and then people will be able to easily understand the work that you have done. And that is what we are going to look at in this last episode on the series. So let's get started. Okay, so before we continue to creating the layout for our work, we can do a small recap on what we did on our previous video. So in our previous video, we created some charts for our work. We created some 3 charts, for one for bar chart, one for pie chart, and then one for histograms. And as you can see at the content section over here, is now part of what the work, the map that you are creating. So if you want to revisit it and see the chart that you created, you right click on that type of chart, you click on open, and then you see the chart being displayed at the bottom side over here. The same thing applies to any other one that you want to open. You right click, you click on open, and then all of those charts are being displayed right here. Now back to the main focus of today's work. We are going to create a layout for our map to combine everything into one PDF or one output. So to create the layout, on the menu bar sections over here, we go to insert, and then on the project panel, we go to new layout. So now new layout shows us a variety of sheets that we can choose from. So from ANSI, from architecture, and then also from ISO, the size of sheet that you want to put everything onto, you select that particular sheet. And then we are going to go with ISO landscape, and then we are going to use, let's use A0. Yeah, let's use A0 for our work. And then the layout pane opens for us to be able to add all other chart properties or the component for our map together in this white window section that we see over here. Now first things first, before we start with adding the component for our map, the first thing that I would recommend you do whenever you are creating a professional map for whoever is first to add some guidelines to your work. Now to add the guidelines, you see at the top here you have a ruler, and then at the side also here we also have another ruler over here. And now wherever you move the mouse, you can see that straight insertion point also moving in relation to the direction of where the mouse is also moving. So now to place the insertion point, you put the mouse to where you want to place the guidelines, and then once you right click, and then you add a guide to place the horizontal and vertical lines on your sheet over here. Now I'm going to place the guides over here just as to help me to know the extent of my whole area, and then also to help me if I'm adding a grid to my work. Now I'm going to start placing the guides. So I want to leave the guide here, right click, and then add a guide, and then you see my vertical line being placed. I'll do the same thing to the end here, right click, and then add a guide, and do the same thing horizontally. Right click, I'll add a guide, then I'll right click, and then I'll add the last guide over here just to guide the whole arrangement of my work over here. Now to start with the layout itself, we're going to bring out the map that we did over here. We're going to bring this whole map into our layout section over here. Now to do that, we go to the map frames, and in the map frames we click on the first two, which is the map frame here, and then we go there to select the map frame in which we're working inside, and this is it. We select this map frame. Now once you select the map frame, you see your mouse pointer changes to a plus sign, allowing us to be able to give an insertion point to where you want our map to be displayed. And most of the times, since I've drew a border around my area. I'm going to start on one edge and then drag and drop my border to the other edge of my working area, and then I release it to show my map inside the window. Now the map is looking very small, so what I will do next is to make this map appear a bit larger. There are two ways actually that you can do this. The first one is by on the content pane section, you select your data, which is the original boundary. You right click and then you go to zoom to layer, and then you see your whole boundary line appearing bigger over here. And then the second one has to do it. You right click inside your boundary, and then you go to the first one, which is activate, and then this activate gives you the room to be able to zoom in and out the data, and then also be able to move around the data and then position it very well around anywhere on your sheet. So we are going to leave it like this here, and then we are going, so once you are good, you go back to the layout tab here, and then you go to close activation to end all that we are doing. Now you could see the point here representing the Ghana Health facilities are looking a bit, they're very small. So that means we have to increase the size of this. So you go back to the content pane section, and then under Ghana Health facilities, you right click on the dot, and then you go to the census to the symbology pin, and then we increase the size of our point feature that we have over here. Now, since our main boundary and everything is looking nice, we can start adding the component of a map. And then the component of a map, the first thing we're going to deal with is the north arrow. And then the map surrounds here, you can see the north arrow. You click on the drop down and then we choose a whole different type of north arrow that we want to use. So we're going to select this one, the ArcGIS North 12. I select this one, and then I take it to where I want to place it. Click and drag anywhere around my working area, leave my hand, and then I see my north arrow being drawn over here. Then the next one is a scale bar. I'm going to add a scale bar. So we have imperial scale bar and a metric scale bar. So whichever one that you want to use for your work, you would select it. So I'm going to use the alternating scale bar 1 metric, and then I drag and drop anywhere around my area, release my hand, and then I could see my scale bar also being added. And then the next, you could see the pointer looking very small. We come back and do some small editing for it to appear much bigger and then nicer. Then the next thing, you go to the legend. But then the legend, we're going to use the option 6, which is this one. Select it, and then we drag and drop anywhere around this area to show our legend as well. And then the last but one thing that we can add to this one is the chart frame. So the chart frame, we go here, we see the different types of charts that we created. You see that if you don't create any charts, or if you go and then select a different map frame here, your chart frame, when you come to the chart frame section, you wouldn't see any charts being created, because all these charts that we created is being created in relation to the type of map frame or the map frame that you are working inside. And since we are working in the map frame that we created these chart properties, that is how come you have all the three showing over here. So depending on what you want to show, we want to show the bar chart, you select the bar chart, and then we drag and drop anywhere around our area, and then you will see that our bar chart would be loaded into our working area over here. You can see from here it is loading. Okay, it has finished loading, and then you can see our bar chart being shown over here. Because of the space, is looking a bit small. All right, so this is fine. And then the last one that we are going to add is a title for our map. So we are going to use the graphics and text. You select the first one, and then you drag anywhere around this, and then we add the title for our map. So let's start with that. The title for our map is to, let's say, map of Greater Accra. All right, first of all, our text is looking very, very small, so let's increase it. Let's change the font. Let's change the font name to Times New Roman. Why is this one not? Let's change the font name to Times New Roman. Okay, it goes and then it comes. Let me change this one as well. It goes and then it comes. Alright, that is because let me select what I'm doing, try and change it a bit, and then now we have it. And then we set it to bold over here, and then we increase the font size to 22, and then we leave the color as it is. And then from here inside our text we can begin to write our text. So map of Greater Accra, map of the Greater Accra region, showing facility type. So it's still looking small. We can select the whole thing again and then increase the font size of our text we have over here, and then you can see it coming here. That is because of the paper size that I choose for it. I have to select a bigger font size for me to be having a very good area over here. So now can increase the spacing that I have so that my area would be, my text would fill the whole line. That is how I want it to be. Let me push this one here a bit so that I can have the whole text being lined up horizontally. And then this is okay. This is okay for me. So now the next thing is the legend. I would also want to increase how the legend is looking, make it appear big a bit. So I'll right click, I'll select it, right click on the legend. So I'll select it and then okay, let me move it around. Right click on the legend and then I'll go to properties. All right, so now in the properties pane, that is where we can do further analysis to the item properties of it, how it is showing. So to increase the size, you go to the word text symbol, and then from the text symbol we can change the font name to Times New Roman, and change it to regular, and then increase the size of it, and then we can leave this one also to 72, and let's see how it comes. Very big. So let's go to 36, and 36 is appearing a bit okay. So we can drag it down to a suitable area. Okay, all right. Select the legend, drag it down to a suitable area on our screen. And then the next thing is to work with the scale bar. So just as we did with the legend, you're going to go to the properties. You're going to go to the properties section of the scale bar and then also change how our scale is also looking. So you go to the map unit, you're going to leave it in kilometers. You can change it if you want. At the drop down, you have meters, you have feet, depending on the one that works best for you. We are going to leave it as it is, like this. Now let me bring it this one here a bit. All right, so now with the symbol, you select the symbol and then try and make changes a bit to it. So you're going to use Times New Roman, you leave it to bold, and then the size we go to 24, and then we see how it appears. Okay, let's increase it a bit. 36 is coming up, so let's leave it at 48 and see how it is. 48 is a bit okay. Let me drag it here a bit so that it moves away from the chart that we created. And then the other thing that we can do also is to work on the bar itself, make it look nice. And then we go to the bar icon over here. Now with the bar icon, to make changes, the symbol, go to the symbol, and then just as we did with the other one, we make changes to This one also will increase the font size to 48, and you see our numbers being increased in size. Let's leave it at 36, and this one is a bit okay. Let me drag this one here a bit so that it moves away from the number. Okay, increases. Now we go back to our bar and then make additional changes also. Let's go to the bar itself. Now the height of the bar is set to 6. We can increase it to 10 and see if it's okay. Let's increase it a bit to 20, and then 20 is appearing much better, and then it looks way better than before. And then the marks, we can also make changes if you want to see some marks. So now it's set to no marks, and then the position is what above the bar. If you want to marks, show some marks, we can select any of this, and then the marks would be shown, but we are going to leave it as it is like this. And then aside that, let me close this one. Let me close this one also. Close this one and then leave this one here. So aside that, everything is looking okay as it is, but then my map, the whole boundary of the Greater Accra is a bit closer to my chart. Then let me go here and then try and position it a bit upwards. Okay, this side is fine. Go here and then close it. And then my title tool is also not positioned well. Let me position it a bit well, bring it here. Then I have it here and then it's showing very nice. Let me do the same thing to my legend. Let me bring it here a bit, push this one inside a bit, bring it here. And now for the legend, in case you want to take out any of the legends here, you don't want it, right under the content section under the legend, you can uncheck the one that you don't want to see in the legend, and then it would move away. And that is that with it. So now we have everything set here. Everything is appearing nice. Everything is looking very okay now that we have this one over here. And then the last thing that we want to add to make it a complete good looking map is a grid to show the geographical region in which our data happens to fall inside. So under the map frame section, you go to grid, and then the grid we are going to choose from whether we want graphical or we want a measured grid. But then we want to work with a measured grid. We don't want graphical grid, but then it depends on what you want to use, and then you select that one and then use it. We are going to use measured grid. We're going to select the first one, which is a measured grid, and then you would see the grid being created on our sheet here. So just as I was saying, I used these lines to serve as a boundary because of this grid that I have over here. And now let's make it appear a bit nice. It's looking very clumsy. So we go to the properties of the grid, and then once in the properties, we can make some changes to it. So with the grid, we'll click on the small arrow drop down here. So we have the map grid itself, we have the labels, the ticks, the grid lines, and then we have the knit line. So each of them gives you the option to be able to apply some formatting to each of them that you want to do. But then first things, under the interval section, we would uncheck this one, automatically adjust. So we would uncheck this one under the interval section over here for the meantime, and then we will make some changes to the labels, to the ticks, and then the grid lines. So with the labels, right now we are seeing 2000 meters for the labels, but we want to increase it to show about 5, 3, 4, 5, 6 labels, and then so we increase the scale of it. So from 2000 we can do it 20,000, and then we click inside, and you could see that our labels for the grid has changed. Initially they were plenty, now it has changed to small. They are looking smaller. Let me change the text size for it. Change this one to New Times Roman, change it to regular bold, and then we increase the font size to 24, and let's see how they all appear. Okay, they are appearing a bit bigger. 24. Let's go to 26. Okay, 26 is also okay. Let's go to 36. 36 is appearing much better now. So we would go back to what we were doing earlier on, and then you see this option, draw parallel to grid lines. It is going to make the ones on the vertical side, the ones on the vertical shown horizontally, to also draw parallel to the grid lines. And once you check this, you can see them being changed, being aligned parallel to our grid lines over here. Now, just as we are having these few numbers, we can also increase it to, let's say, 200,000 meters and see what happens with our data. Wow, 200,000 meters, and we are not having any one over here. So we can do it to 100,000, and let's see. Let's change it to 100,000 and let's see. Oh, we are having only one value showing. All right, so let's leave it to 10,000, and then let's see the number that comes. Okay, then I think the 20,000 was much better. Let's leave it to the 20,000 like this, and then you can see the numbers appearing over here. Now, the other thing that we can do is to the grid lines that we have inside our map. We don't want all these grid lines to show. It depends. If you want to show some of them, you can show some of the grid lines in relation to the numbers that we have. If we don't want to show any at all, too, we can do that. So when we go to, right now we are at labels, when you go to grid lines, we are going to set the same interval that we set for our labeling to the grid lines, and then the interval we use is 20,000. So when you go to grid lines, we are going to choose 20,000 also for the interval, and then you can see the lines change to where we have what the numbers or the labeling, where we have it showing over here. And then we can either choose to show these grid lines or choose not to show. So if you don't want to show it, let me go back to the, so if you don't want to show it, you go to the appearance, the symbol, and then you set the line width to 0, and then all of it would go, all of it would vanish from there, and then we don't have any grid lines showing, and that will make your map appear very neat. And now with the ticks as well, we can also go and change it to 20,000, and then the ticks will appear only at where the places that we have the labels showing. So that is how you add the grid to your working map, or to put your map into a good looking frame, such that should anyone take this one and then somebody wants to georeference your work to a real world map, the person will be able to align this your map using the coordinates that we have over here to the actual location on the map. But then that one, it will be very difficult for the person since you don't have the grid line showing. So if you want it to appear, then it means you have to, if they're going to do any georeferencing to align it, then it means you have to change the appearance over here and then set the line width to 0, so that you'll be able to see the grid lines and then do the georeferencing like I'm talking about. Aside that, we are good to go, and then everything is appearing good and nice as it is. So now to export this map into a suitable format like a PDF or a picture, you go to the share section and then go to export layout. Now under the export layout, we have what default, flattened PNG, reference PNG, vector PNG, and then web JPEG. So when you choose the web JPEG, you can see the layout section being shown over here. And I want the layout section being shown over here. It's either you choose a different directory for where you want the data to be saved. I can leave it as the default directory that I have over here, and then click on export, and then my map here would be exported into a JPEG format, and then I can view it. So let's wait a bit for the export to finish. Okay, so our export is done, and then you can click on view exported file, and then our file is being exported as a JPEG, and then you see our file being shown over here. So that is that on how you can create a professional map using the ArcGIS Pro software.